this article on Black women and silent rage and
Mm-hmm.
keeping our emotions bottled up inside, not expressing them, and how that is actually now contributing to a whole host of autoimmune diseases, according to some of the studies. And you are one of the best people I can think of to talk about this. So, yes, welcome back to the show, of course, but give us your sense as to what you think is
Yeah.
going on here and what we need to know about this really important topic.
Gosh, it's, I would say, Lurie, as happens, the way you handled that previous call actually really speaks to this article and some of the topics within it as well, because there was a management in there. And maybe we'll circle into and get more deep inside of that. I can use you as an example.
Mm-hmm.
But we have known for some time that Black women, that women of color, but my work has centered primarily in Black women, and those in my life closest to me are Black women, mother, sister, cousins, aunties, friends, carry a disproportionate amount, a health disparity amount of autoimmune disorders. And I think it's really important for us to understand, what does it mean for your body to have an autoimmune disease or disorder? It means that your immune system is rejecting your healthy cells and attacking them. It
Wow.
means, yeah, your immune system is essentially, and I'm a woman who believes deeply in boundaries for our health and our wellness. It means that your major life health boundary has broken down, and instead of protecting you from those factors that could cause disease and a lack of health, it is attacking your healthy cells and causing you to be sick.
Ooh.
So the danger is in the home. It's inside the body. And it's because our immune system is not recognizing us.
Mm. Like almost as if we are strangers in our own body.
This is it. So your autoimmune, because your immune system, what it does, it goes on red alert. White blood cells start to get activated when there's a disease, or you cut yourself and you get inflammation. The inflammation is meant to, you know, the antibodies get activated. The inflammation is meant to block up and clog up to its defense. It's like red alert, red alert. Our barrier has been breached. So your
Mm.
immune system does that when there is an external threat or a threat from a foreign body in the human body, and it does that to protect us. And so our white blood cells and the whole immune system, you know, system reaction goes into play, and it works to attack that form. Well, it works to say, well, what are you, right? So it's identifying, do we know you? It's like if
Mm.
you come into a neighborhood, do we know you? And so, do we know you? And if not, then we have to get you out of here. And so then we start to engage our immune response. And so that's what happens when we get sick. We're down for the count, we get a fever and things like that, or um, you know, we need to, we feel it as sickness, but really it's the immune system is in high alert. So the fever is the body heating up to make the conditions inhospitable to that foreign body. So when you have an autoimmune disease, it means that your immune system is not recognizing you, your healthy cells, your normal natural cells and tissues and organ functioning as its own. And so it attacks it.
My God. Well, Dr. Wendy Williams, one of the things that surprised me about this
Hmm.
was the fact that the thing that seems to be contributing to our cells, metaphorically saying, Harpo, who this woman,
Yes.
is the fact that we as women, according to the report,
Yes.
this study out of Stanford said that women
Hmm.
of color are more prone to developing
Hmm.
autoimmune disorders from internalizing our
Yes.
feelings and emotions. It's the almost a betrayal of our emotional well-being in
Yes.
some ways, the refusal to voice what's happening, or the inability to voice what's happening, our feelings, our emotions. That betrayal of our emotional body, which requires us, in order to maintain emotional health, to process our emotions, to process our feelings, to let them out. By betraying our emotional body, our physical body is then triggered into this space where it doesn't recognize our health. And when I read this article, it felt to me again that Harpo, who this woman kept coming up for me, because if my emotional body is not
Mhm,
getting the health and the wellness and
mhm,
the recovery that it needs, and it is connected to my physical body, then my physical body is not able to provide my physical body the health and wellness that it needs. And this essentially means we are in many ways silent, at least to me, and please correct me if I'm misstating any of
mhm,
this. That's why we brought you
mhm,
here. You're the expert.
mhm,
But if
mhm.
I am betraying the truth, my truth, if I am betraying the truth of my emotions and my experiences, my body will then betray me as well. Is that a non-scientific way of seeing this? Because when I'm like, if my own body is saying Harpo who this woman, but it's saying Harpo who this woman because I done told my emotions Harpo who these emotions, it
Mhm.
seems like one really feeding into the other.
I I think that's a meme. You can meme that Harper, who this woman in the body. I think so, Lurie, and I feel like part of what we have to recognize and appreciate is the interrelation between the mental and the physical,
Ooh,
and that and we talk about it a lot. And in our lives, we know that if we relax, if we go do some yoga, these things help us to bring the temperature down, but it literally brings the temperature down in your body. I once said to a friend some years ago, she was really angry, and I don't think she even realized how angry she was. And I said, your anger will kill you,
oh,
because it will. Your anger, you walking around with the anger and the hurt unprocessed and undigested from whatever the
oh,
harms are from family, whatever the harms are from the world, the environment, the culture, the society. And we have a lot to be mad about, as Solange says, right?
that's right.
But that external, those things in happening externally that have happened to you externally, when you bring them inside, your anger starts to turn on you and on your body. And that does lead to a number of mental health issues, depression, anxiety being primary in that space. I think the other thing that I would like to share with you and to your listeners as well is to understand the different types of personalities and understanding this autoimmune response to stifling your feelings, to not expressing in a healthy way how you feel, which is so there are three types that we've talked about in the field of psychology: type A,
Hold
type
on, I gotta
B.
turn my paper over. Hold on,
Okay.
let me take some notes. Hold on. My notes
This
is
is
too full.
lecturing
Go
this
ahead. I got
morning.
paper in
Type
hand. Go ahead, pen in hand. Go ahead.
Type
I'm
A
ready.
personality, which a lot of people know about. We know this is like that super organized, very detailed, a little high strung person who can't
Mm,
let things go and a little controlling. Type B is meant to be the antithesis of that. This person's more relaxed, easygoing, kind of, what we're probably trying to hope for in some ways. There's a shadow and light side to everything. Right.
yes.
So each of these personalities have those elements as well. Type C speaks to a type of personality that we've sort of said that this type of individual may be at an increased risk of developing cancer.
Mm,
So when you think about autoimmune diseases and you think about cancer, there are ways in which they operate similarly in the body. The cancer is the exponential and unmitigated growth of cellular bodies that are not intended and are not about don't contribute to the healthy functioning of the body. It's just this growth. And when you think about autoimmune disease, it's the inability to fight that growth and to address that growth or recognize that that growth is not normal. And so therefore it's taking over as well. Think about type C personalities, and I'll tell you a little bit about some of these characteristics which map directly onto the worry that they're saying is happening for they say women of color, but then all the statistics and all the data that they show are about Black women.
right.
Attention. It's
Mm,
emotional non-expressiveness, stifling feelings, suppressing anger and other emotions. It's avoiding conflict, avoiding difficult emotional experiences or confrontations with folks. And what I can tell you is that healthy psychological functioning in terms of addressing emotional breaches or when someone crosses your boundaries, which is one of the main ways in which um, one of the main sources of a lot of our anger, and it makes sense. And I've mentioned this word boundaries again because your immune system is your ultimate boundary system for your health. So if you are allowing people to cross your emotional boundaries, it soon becomes and breaks down your physical health boundary, which is your immune system. And that's why you get the autoimmune disease. Uh, Other elements of this personality type, the type C's, fear of social non acceptance. So you don't want to rock the boat because you don't want people to reject you. So you're willing to forego the requirements that you have for people in your life, love, relationships, friendships, and you lower the threshold for what people can get away with in order to have connection, even if that connection is harmful to you. Submissiveness. And I know there's a lot of people out here who like to talk about
Oh, wait,
submission,
what?
being compliant, uncritical of others, just being submissive. So again, I know a lot of people in the relationship space, I would call it, I won't go there, but I know they're asking for that. But a lot, you have to earn submission. You have to be trusted and worthy of someone relieving their boundary for you. And that means, right, that you have to have done that for them too, and that you all bring love and care in that space. That's
Oh,
where that comes from. So that's just my little tidbit. And then coping. You know, a lot of times the ways in which we cope, they can be maladaptive and they can be adaptive. So is your coping focused on behaviors that help you to distract and can disconnect in ways that also exacerbate health issues? Are we drinking too much? Are we, what are we doing to cope? Are we trying to sort of get into our dopaminergic cycle of like highs and lows? Are we on our phones too much? Or are we talking to somebody? Are we connecting with loved ones and friends, a therapist even? Are we journaling? Are we taking that evening, afternoon walk? I do a midday yoga session with myself, just be like, get away from the computer and just, do those things. And so there's a lot that we know that can interrupt these cycles. But a type C personality is one that is at the cornerstone, is one in which personal, social, emotional, and cultural boundaries are breached. And autoimmune diseases are also one in which the boundary of our immune system is breached such that we don't recognize ourselves. And so instead of fighting and protecting us from folks and from instances that can be harmful, we attack ourselves, thereby letting those things in and harming us even more.
my God. Damn. 866-801-8255. 866-801. I feel like I need a therapy session after just hearing you say that. And so to be clear, this is not to say that only people in this particular personality type are the ones getting autoimmune disease, but
No,
that
no,
there is a
no.
yeah, so this can happen to all of us, but that if I'm hearing you correctly, if we're engaging in this sort of patterning of our lives, that we may be more susceptible to our body looking
Yes.
inside and saying, "Who this? We all know her."
I want to
Oh
say that
Lord.
it's not these personality types. The type C, so type A and type B came early in the field of psychology. Type C came later from studies in medical settings where they were beginning to recognize some similarities across patients who had succumbed to cancer. So it's
Wow.
not saying that you're type C and therefore you'll get cancer. It's saying we see a lot of patients who have developed cancer, whose bodies are succumbing to this horrific disease, and they have some characterological traits in common.
Mm.
So it's the other way around.
Yeah, yeah.
Mm-hmm.
And we see from this article, Dr. Gabor Mate, who is a
Mm-hmm.
renowned trauma and stress
Mm-hmm.
physician,
Mm-hmm.
emphasizes that repressed anger
Mm-hmm.
often manifests as autoimmune disease. So
Mm-hmm.
folks, we talked
Mm-hmm.
about this in terms of black women, but any of y'all know any black men with repressed anger?
Yes,
Anyone?
yes,
Anyone? Anyone?
yes.
Anybody know any black children with
Mm-hmm.
repressed anger? Anyone? Anyone? I hate to do the Bueller voice, but this is we are focusing here on black women,
Mm-hmm.
but we're focusing on black people and our conditions, the conditions which we carry in common, which contribute to this. And she says that, or Dr. Mate says in his book, not she, in his book, When the Body Says No, they describe
Mm-hmm.
how nice people who suppress their emotions are more prone to these conditions.
Mm-hmm.
And they go on to talk about how another professor, another psychology expert says that the research highlights that women account for nearly 80% of autoimmune disease cases as compared to men. But again,
Mm-hmm.
that does not mean that men are not present there, but perhaps that
Mm-hmm.
society has
Mm-hmm.
structured roles for women such that the roles that we are traditionally thought
Yeah.
to be the traditional gender roles are the types
Mm-hmm.
of roles that will also contribute to these sorts of diseases in the body, because these roles are often not in alignment with the purpose, mission, and internal desires of the woman who are forced to adhere to them. Am I making
Mm-hmm.
any sense at all?
You make every bit of sense. And, I really, want to sort of sit with the men for a second if we can, because I know
Please.
that oftentimes we see these types of reports and the focus is on women primarily because compared to men, women go to the doctor. So yeah,
Oh, snap.
snap, right? So
Oh,
if you,
snap.
how many men do we have in our lives who've caught prostate cancer a little too late?
Mm.
So, it isn't all of us. And I would say too, the other thing that I just want to amplify and highlight for all of us, our entire community, including our children, is that we have expressed to them the safeguard of racial socialization so that you're not hurt, harmed, or murdered when you leave your home, that suppressing your emotions, suppressing your actual experience of who you are. We know that that may mean that you'll return home to us, but that is also what is implicated in developing autoimmune disease. And think about a child and their developing body, they're developing immune system. They're growing, the fastest rate of growth for any baby is 0 to 5, but it continues to become more etched and nuanced and focused in terms of its articulation as they age, particularly through their teen years. And that is exactly the same time that our babies go from cute, right, to threat in our
Yeah.
society, our boys and our girls, and our they and our thems in between. So when you think about the ways in which our racial socialization, I would say as Black people, and again, this article does reference folks of color, but then the data is drawn from Black women. And I would say by extension, we have to include our entire community in that space.
Yep.
Um, this starts to really become more horrific. So it's a larger issue in terms of how we think about what do we do internally, in community, individually as human beings, what we do, but also what are the systemic and structural implications for shift and change, and is that actually possible in the society in which we live?
Wow, that part right there. Is it actually possible in the society in which we live? That's the question I keep coming back to. I see
Mhm.
one of the listeners in the group chat or in the Nubia chat says, "I wonder if our dad's anger contributed to his death besides high blood pressure and heart." I
Yeah,
will add that high blood pressure and heart disease can be exacerbated by stress, but that's just my
absolutely.
editing. Adding that he goes on to say, "My
Mhm.
mom told us he would come home from his government job angry because he trained white people who then got promoted and became
Yes.
his boss." And
Mhm.
that is something that so many black people have
Yes.
experienced. and
Yes.
and and again, high blood pressure, heart disease exacerbated by emotions and being sort of forced to occupy in a consistent emotional state of rage. That's the part that is also not necessarily spoken to in this article, but we see that in our lived experience.
Yes.
I was in an interesting back and forth with someone recently who took issue with some of the moment of gratitudes that I had posted, because I was talking about the fact that at the end of the day, after we've analyzed how everybody has wronged us and done us wrong, and the circumstances and the systems and the whatnot, we have to heal ourselves, because nobody else cares. If they cared, they would have helped us heal. We are
Mhm.
responsible for grappling with it in whatever way that we can, to
Mhm.
navigate it as healthily as possible. And
Mhm.
what you said, it can we do this in this society? That's where that question becomes sort of,
Mhm.
it almost creates an impasse, because if the reality is that we have to heal
Mhm.
our conditions, because nobody else is going to do it for us, but we are persistently trying to heal in a society that has clearly said, boo boo, we don't like you, who is she? Then doesn't that create sort of this place where either we have to start thinking of different solutions,
Yeah.
or we just sort of continually occupy this state of perpetual abuse, both from external forces and from our own body not being able to recognize our turning of our betrayal of our the truth of our emotions.
Mm. Well, what I will never allow anybody to do is steal our hope or our joy.
Come on.
Okay. And I say, so a few things come to mind. The listeners' comments really hit home because, what the article doesn't speak to is that oftentimes that rage, it happens in a variety of spaces, but the workplace and the interrelation between us as people and our labor and that legacy in our society is one in which that rage will certainly bubble up. We're allowed to have ambition. We're allowed to have dreams. And the idea of, being gifted and talented and innovative. I was going to say young, gifted, and Black, but we are gifted and Black at all ages of the spectrum. Look at me in middle
Come
age.
on.
Okay.
Oh, so
So,
he's so cute. Really
but we
cute. We
really are. And
cute.
to have that stifled and to have your curiosity, to have your generativity, to have your gems stolen like that, to have your time, one of the most
Mm.
it's the one resource that we know, but we just don't know what the balance is something I think I saw you post that or somebody did the other day. And I thought, yeah, stolen from these workplaces. So, shameless plug, but I wrote a book called Black Women at Work on refusal and recovery. And there's a reason why I say you got to refuse, because I don't know that the systems and the structures are ever going to align and prepare themselves for you, for us. But I do know that the real power, the spiritual power, lies in each of us to own ourselves. And I will say, too, with hope and joy, is watching the way that many folks, particularly of African descent, but I would say others who have witnessed the severe anti-Blackness racism and the murder of George Floyd and many others, but the televised murder of George Floyd, I think, just was a critical moment in our society, for folks to say, okay, now we're done with this. We're no longer having these conversations with you where you can talk and we have to, and we're listening and you're nodding your head saying that you understand. Meanwhile, everything remains the same. I think that we've reached a point, a stoppage point, our own immune system as a community of Black people, and I would say a community of committed folks to humanity overall, are done with the BS and are turning our attention to this sickening body inside of us that is causing us so much harm.
Wow. That's a potential powerfully jump. That's a potentially powerful jump off point, right? The
Mhm.
refute the and again, tragedy is tragedy. Sometimes the aftermath of tragedy is where growth can happen, and the collective refusal, the oh
Mhm.
no, to hell, we not doing this
The
no more. That
collective refusal.
collective, yes, that is becoming even more palpable to me. And as we are continuing to see the dismantling of some of the traditional norms
Mhm.
that the country has sort of relied upon,
Mhm.
both politically, civically, and emotionally, so on and so forth. It feels like there is an opening and a widening of the space that's going to
Yeah.
allow that we are going to allow for us. Because I'm not giving power to anyone else to allow us to do anything. That we are claiming power for ourselves to be able to say yes or no.
Yeah.
And that yes or no came up really strong for me when I saw that
Mhm.
HBCUs right now have
Mhm.
record levels of applications. There has
Yes.
been oh, you don't like us that much, not that you liked us a lot beforehand, because most of the schools only had 3 to 4% of Black people, and that has been the case for years. But the collective, oh, you really don't like us, bet we don't need you. We ain't even try. In fact, we don't want you to sit where we gonna sit. We are gonna go home. We're taking our talents, our gift skills, and our capacity, and we're going home. That to
Mhm.
me, every time I start to see these movements, and we saw, what was it? Oh, I can't remember what Clark Atlanta, I think, had
Mhm.
more applications than the University of Georgia. 45,000 applications is what I saw, more than the University of Georgia. And that to me is a real recognition of, yeah, so we have value. We might not have valued it as much in the past,
Yeah.
but now that we see how y'all really moving, we are hearing the calls. We're being reminded of just the enormity of the value that we provide, that we bring to
Mhm.
ourselves, and we're
Mhm.
going home because y'all don't
Mhm.
play fair. Y'all don't even know how to play. Y'all ain't got the rhythm. You ain't got the blues. You ain't got the range. And pretty soon you ain't going to have us either. That feels like the beginning stages of something more significant. I don't know if you're seeing signs of this in your work at all, but
Yeah, well,
tell me
I'm
your
in higher
perspective.
education, so for sure I do. And I think that part of what we're in the middle, Arundhati Roy wrote in April 2020 in the Financial Times, she wrote, "The pandemic is a portal." And then when people were able to start going back outside, they forgot that the pandemic is a portal. A
Yeah.
portal is a doorway, a gateway. What we don't often think about, though, through is that it's not optional whether you go through it, it's sucking you in. We're being
Hmm.
sucked into the future, right? Babies can't stay in utero forever. They do got to come out, and the life forces start to happen. You got to go. It's time for you to go, honey. And that's us too. We're being born into a new world, whether or not we want to say yes to it or not. I think part of that new world, Lurie, is we are grappling with and beginning to allow ourselves to understand that the meritocracy myth is not real. We're starting to
Right.
take the things that we've read about and do something with it. You know, Audre Lorde told us to not sit in places where you're not love is not being served. So we're like, oh well, where is the love? We do know that for Black children, and I would say for many children of diverse backgrounds that are not white, and or who grow up poor and white, that actually there's love at HBCUs, and that's what people know, and that's where they're going. We also know that the cost of higher education for most traditional higher ed spaces has risen exponentially over many years. It actually started when you and I began to go to college, which is why the student loan debt crisis happened on us and around our backs.
Yep.
And so thank you for loan forgiveness. I'm truly grateful for that. And so
Hallelujah.
there's that predatory nature of thinking of the predatory nature of the ambitions of poor black and brown and white folk in this country has been deeply problematic. And so the turning of the back on that, the saying, oh, I don't need to come and sit in these quote unquote elite spaces that are only made elite if you have someone like me to compare your elitism to
Come
me
on.
not being there. And
Come on.
in higher education right now, as an industry, now granted, there are some institutions that just have amazing endowments, but you need students. And so if them as a destination point, those that have been inhospitable to folks of color, have been inhospitable to poor folk, who have been inhospitable to thinking about those young people who are arriving to campus with mental health issues and concerns, with diverse gender perspectives and frameworks and ways of living and amplifying that in their lives, with psychosocial and emotional tragedy, because that's the world we wrought for them and that we've created for. They're arriving to school with all of that. If you do what an HBCU does typically for Black children, those kids are going to be all right, because
Right.
what we know is that a rising tide lifts all boats. And what we had to do for Black communities to make higher ed accessible for Black folks and for Black children actually will make it accessible for everybody.
That's right.
That's right.
Wow. This is why we appreciate you, Wendy Williams. Somebody on Twitter said, "You got to bring this sister back. She's spitting straight fire." And don't you worry, Dr. Wendy Williams. She gonna be. She's a part of Lurie Daniel favorite show fam. Well, she's a part of just my life,
Oh,
but she's a
oh,
part of Lurie Daniel favorite show family. You will definitely hear her on these airways even more. And Dr. Williams, you are you? Is there your election for? Is
oh.
that still running?
It's
What is
still
happening
running.
there?
We are almost to the finish line. I feel a little bit like our VP Kamala Harris, and I'm kind of fun to have these things running
Fandom.
in tandem. Thank you. I was losing my word.
Yeah.
But our election for the American Psychological Association, our election ends on September 16th. If you are a psychologist, if you know someone, or if you're part of a group of folks of us who are psychologists, if you have a psychologist and they are a member of the American Psychological Association, if you know a student studying psychology who may also be a member, tell them to look me up. My name is Wendy Williams. I think you can remember that. And I have a wonderful platform, Radically Well Together. And I think that we are standing to do some really amazing things together within the context of wellness that is justice focused.